So looking at the standings here, and we're recording this on Sunday, on Mother's Day, so happy Mother's Day belatedly to all the moms out there. Thank you.
Yes, have a happy Mother's Day, and thank you to our producer.
Our producer, who's Gordon's mom, who's happy Mother's Day because it's in real time here. And if you look at the baseball standings, and I've been saying this the past few weeks, things like kind of settled out to where we thought they were going to be pretty quickly.
Well, we talked about this last week, kind of how things are kind of settling into place, and with the exception of really one team, everybody's more or less where you expect them to be.
Right. I mean, just because the White Sox are on a 4-game winning streak is no reason to go, well, they're going to be a contender for first.
They fixed everything.
For first place. But that is, for them, gets them out of the 62 Mets conversation, at least for a little while.
For a minute, yeah.
But, I was looking at the Orioles, who are leading the American League there over the Yankees, and how just up and down the lineup, I thought, wow, I don't think I realized that this is like a 100-win team, and they did that last year again, and I've been not giving them the credit.
They're going to be a 100-win team again this year. It's going to be them and the Yankees in the AL East, and based on the way things are shaking out, it's going to be pretty stratified. I think they're going to be at the top, and there's going to be a pretty significant gap between them and the next couple teams.
And the Orioles got Means back. They got Bradish back. Grayson Rodriguez is still out, but that's going to help them. But the Yankees,
Alex,
I don't know how they're doing this.
Aaron Judge is starting to wake up.
Aaron Judge is starting to wake up, except that he's batting .228. Mm-hmm. He has the same amount of home runs as Soto, who has been amazing.
Right.
So Aaron Judge has a 138 ops plus, batting .228.
That's terrifying.
That's unbelievable, which means he hasn't done anything yet except walk. He's walked more than Soto.
And he's hit a bunch of home runs.
And he's hit 9 home runs, which is among the league leaders, but not the league leader. Soto has an ops plus, by the way, for the Yankees of 174. So
that's a man in a contract.
When you wonder about how the Yankees doing this without Garrett Cole,
that's how.
They just. These guys, and Stanton really hasn't really caught fire either.
He hit a Titanic home run the other day.
But, and he's cruising along at a 108 ops plus, and I expect more from him.
You need a little bit more from Stanton.
So the Yankees are going to be there because I do believe they're going to get Cole back at some point. Clark Schmidt has actually turned out to be a really nice pitcher this year for them.
They're probably thrilled.
I don't think anybody was counting on him to be as good. I mean, he's been promising, but he's really gotten off to a good start. And so they are the class of the American League East, with the Red Sox and Rays, and I guess if you want to say the Jays, sort of trying to figure out who of those three teams might be the team that's trying to chase down the top two.
Right now it looks like the Red Sox, and that's something we don't believe in, but I don't really think any of those teams is going to be the one to suddenly wake up and start playing better.
Right. The Red Sox, and the only stat I looked at their 20-19 record as we hear on Sunday that was interesting is they have a positive run differential.
Right.
Which surprised me, and then I remembered that, they've gotten some really good pitching so far this year, sort of outperforming their normal expectation.
What was expected of them.
Right. So that's where I don't know if that's going to hold up, and that's why I think they could collapse.
That would be why most
the
people
Rays,
would be
by
concerned.
contrast, have had not good pitching this year. When we think about all the darn pitchers they don't have starting for them that should be starting,
it's like an entire rotation.
Right, exactly. And their bullpen is not the bullpen of Rays,
which is why it's hard to see them suddenly going on a run and getting a ton of wins.
I think I'm coming around to thinking, you know what? I hate doubting them, which I do every year. This might be the year that you might be able to do that.
And up until the last couple of days, the top of the AL Central has been just humming right along, with the Guardians, the Twins, and the Royals playing really good baseball.
But the Guardians lost 2 straight to the White Sox.
They've lost 3 in a row. But even the Tigers are at 20-19, so it's very interesting that we were spend so much time this offseason talking about will 4 or 5 teams be above 500 in the AL East? Well, don't look now, but that's happened in the AL Central, stunningly enough.
Well, and everybody wants to talk about the Royals, and the Royals, I guess are worth talking about because I still go to the it's not going to last thing for them. Be this good. Their run differential, so they are plus 47, which is among the best in the American League as run differential. No way that is sustained.
I don't think it'll hold up, but I think for the Royal fans, considering they were a team that was hoping to play themselves into wild card contention this year, if they had a nice run and maybe
they were dreaming of that.
Right, and maybe they challenged. I think that was like, okay, yeah, if everything goes right this year, maybe we challenge for a third wild card spot. I think it was a reasonable outlook for Royal fans to have. They're doing better than that. So I think regardless from what happens at this point, as long as they can get to like the end of May with how they've been doing, Royal fans will have meaningful baseball to watch the rest of the year, and that's important for a young team kind of figuring out their way.
Well, I know you have some good friends that are Royal fans, so I hear them chirping in your new ear.
You're hearing some very
because it's very royally kind of. So because if I had to pick who's going to finish higher in the American League Central between the Royals and Tigers, I'd pick the Tigers.
Well, the Tigers certainly have the current Cy Young favorite pitching for them in Tarik Skubal. He's been unbelievable to start this season.
And I don't know why it's so much news other than we like to talk about figures. So he hit 100 miles an hour on the radar gun for the first time in his career yesterday. Okay. But that was like a headline MLB article. Like, he threw 100 miles an hour. Yeah, a lot of guys do that.
Yeah,
so, but for a starter, that's cool.
And I guess it's the first time he's done that, so ooh.
But he is, I think before the season, people thought this guy is going to have a good year.
The Tigers needed him to have a good year.
It's even better than that.
Right, and now he's going out and being the ace they hoped he was going to be. And you've got a bunch of teams that are playing good baseball in the AL Central and the Chicago White Sox.
And the Chicago White Sox, who, by winning 2 in a row or three in a row, Pedro Grifol lives on another week.
Exactly. Maybe his goal is make it to the All-Star break.
I can't. Only because I thought the same thing with the Cardinals manager. We'll talk about them in a bit. Ali Marmol. Is like, well, who are we going to get to manage this team if we fire these guys? Because who's going to want to manage these teams?
Exactly. I think you might be seeing a current situation like that potentially developing as we move to the AL West in Houston, because the AL West is playing out as expected, and then there's Houston.
Are you going to drop this on Joe Espada like it's his fault the Astros suck this year?
No, I don't think I would drop it on him, but this is the kind of thing, when things go this badly, when they're not expected to, people lose their jobs sometimes. I don't know if it'll necessarily get dropped on him, but somebody's going to get hung for this.
The
same way we all thought Buck was going to get another year.
Yeah. I don't see it certainly yet at this point. I think the Astros are still the best thing for them is that the rest of the division hasn't separated themselves and gotten that much ahead of them. You don't have a 26-12 team like you do in the NL East with the Phillies. With the Phillies, where
right.
It's, okay, if somebody was 26-12 on the 14-25 Dodgers, that's a 13-game lead.
Right, that's
all of a sudden you're like, wait a second, but you're only 7 games behind, so they're still well within reach of turning it around. But they have gone 4-6 in their last 10. The Astros. I keep saying they're going to rally, they're going to turn it around. They have a negative 34 run differential, which really surprises me.
It's the middle of May now,
and it's their pitching. They have given up the most runs in the American League of any team. So that is not Astros pitching at all. They and the Angels,
right.
Actually.
And when you're counting on old guys to come back to be the strength of your rotation, that's now a scary prospect. You hope you would be adding a guy like Verlander coming in, and he can work his way in. Now you need him to come back and be excellent, and that's always a scary prospect.
Yeah, and he got to watch Tarik Skubal be excellent yesterday when they lost that game. So in the National League, you've got a team in first place, as we mentioned in the East, in the Philadelphia Phillies, with a plus 63 run differential, the best in baseball. The second best in baseball. That would be the Dodgers that have the best in baseball. And the Phillies, I would say, having won 9 out of 10, and we kind of got on them saying that they haven't played maybe as tough a schedule. At this point, man, that's a really good team. They're 28-12.
They're the only team with a 700 winning percentage in the major leagues. I think they're a pretty good team.
And so, the Braves, who have won 2 out of their every 3 games at 24-12, are looking up at the Phillies, and that's not a position the Braves are accustomed to being in.
No, but you have to kind of worry that we haven't even seen the crazy Braves run where they normally, from about June to September, they just forget how to lose baseball games. So you might have 2 teams in the NL East that just absolutely run away with, the division and with crazy records, which could really hurt the other 3 teams. I mean, you're already seeing it with the Marlins and their dreadful 10-31 record.
How about a minus 90 run differential so far for the Marlins? I mean, that's just
right. And I feel
awful.
like a part of the
they scored the least, gave up the most.
And I think the only reason that we're not talking about how bad they've been more, interestingly, just because I noticed this, the Marlins have scored 148 runs. Which is not the least. I think the Cardinals are.
You're right. They're right there.
But shockingly, the second place Mariners have also only scored 140.
Well, we knew they would have a problem hitting. But they're near first place because they got pitching.
Well, that's a team I think will be making a move at this deadline to try and get another bat in there because they need it. But going back to the NL East, the Nationals, the Mets, the Marlins. they're consigned to a life of hoping they get to compete for a wild card spot.
And let's just talk about for a second for the Mets. And people know that we're big Met fans. So, yes, the Nationals are a game ahead of the Mets, who have not yet played them. So the Mets this year have a 0-run differential. They've scored as many runs as they've given up. They've won about half their. They won one little less
They're
than
good,
half
honest to goodness.
That is a 500 team staring you right in the face, folks.
Win a few, lose a few.
Yeah, that's going to be us.
We don't want to get too ahead of ourselves.
We win a bunch of games, we lose a bunch of games. That's going to be what you get. And
salt of the earth, lunch pail kind of team.
In the best of worlds, the Mets, it all could come together. And they brought up Christian Scott yesterday, who actually pitched his first game at Citi Field, pitched a nice game, but was completely overshadowed because Paul Skenes pitched his first game in the major leagues for Pittsburgh, the rookie sensation.
And it's been interesting this year because both Skenes and Christian Scott pitched okay yesterday. I think Scott
was probably better, but Scott pitched longer.
Scott pitched longer, and I think it was overall a little bit more effective than Skenes was. But watching both Skenes and Scott, and watching a bunch of these young hitters come up, the gulf between AAA and the major league seems like it's bigger than ever. Because one of the things I noticed, so Orlando Arcia hit a home run off of Christian Scott yesterday, and he did it off of like a 95-mile-an-hour off the plate inside fastball. And you could see Scott kind of looking at it like, nobody can do that in AAA. Nobody,
he hit that out?
Yeah, right. He hit one, he hit that. Two, he was able to drive it out of the ballpark and keep it
I didn't see anybody like that in AAA.
And I saw the same thing from Skenes a couple times where he threw pitches and guys just fought him off or pulled them. I remember distinctly there was one where he threw a fastball and a guy pulled the fastball and he had the looks like I was like, they can pull that?
Right.
And it was really interesting because we've seen hitters come up and just look absolutely lost when they come up right now. And I think that's because there's a gigantic velocity gap between AAA and the majors where you see guys throwing 92 to 94 in AAA, and everybody in the majors is 96 plus.
If they're throwing 98 in the minor leagues, they can't control it, or else they'd be in the major leagues.
Right.
And J.D. Martinez, who just came back for the Mets, was making that comment when he played in AAA, and and he was doing okay before he came back, which he's now with the Mets, as we mentioned. And he said, "So what's going on? How you feeling?" He goes, "Well, I'm fine, except that I haven't seen any velocity." So that he knows that at AAA he's not going to see, or a sudden he's going to come in and he's getting these late game opportunities, and the guy's throwing 98. You don't see that.
Right. Not only does he throw 98
on the corner,
he throws it with location, and you have guys that are coming in like Mason Miller chucking it at 102. That really changes the game when every single pitcher coming out of the bullpen is throwing that hard. And that's why I think you see some teams, when they have these strong bullpens and pitching staffs, like the Milwaukee Brewers, that's why they're being really successful. And every team's trying to find those arms, and it's just an arms race.
And Milwaukee, who leads the Central over the Cubs, and I still feel Milwaukee has overperformed because I didn't pick them, so I'll take that right there.
Good on that one.
That they've scored 200 runs, so they've scored a lot more. They've been a much better hitting team than I imagined they would be this year.
Them, right.
And actually probably haven't been quite as good at pitching. Well,
they've been the best in the Central.
I thought when they lost Woodruff and they lost Corbin Burns, how do you lose two guys like that and have Freddie Peralta be your number one? They're finding a way.
They rolled right along, and you've got the Cubs that are kind of nipping along right at their heels, and then immediately past that you get into the quagmire of the NL Central.
Yeah, the Pirates, really good start, despite Skenes and Jared Jones being sort of hopefully the stalwarts on the rotation for the next 10 years.
But the offense has gone real quiet in Pittsburgh.
They went through a real bad stretch in there. They're among the least prolific teams scoring.
Despite yesterday being Paul Skenes' debut, there were still fire Blake Shelton chants going on when they had a reliever throw 12 straight balls to walk in 3 runs yesterday.
What a weird game that was.
Right. And what's really bad is, as bad as the Pirates have been, that doesn't even speaks to the depth that the Cardinals and the Reds have sunk to.
Well, and the Reds started out okay, or they had to come, and then they're 1-9 in their last 10, just like the Cardinals,
right,
by the way, and so they have sunk. Although the Reds are still within striking distance, obviously.
If we're going to say the Astros are in striking distance at 7 back, you kind of have to say the Reds are at 7.
But I think at a certain point, the Cardinals, and I've said this a long time, I think the Cardinals might go into sell mode, and everybody thinks this is a team that could still come. And you know what? They don't look right. They don't look good.
Here's the problem. You have to have things people want to sell.
Yeah, well.
And are you going to sell Arenado and Goldschmidt?
Well, it depends on what you're asking.
Right. I'm just saying, if those two aren't on the table, they're not trading Jordan Walker, so who are they trading?
And it's too early at this point in the season to say we need to go and get a guy like Goldschmidt to put us in at first base. Let's say the Yankees, Rizzo gets hurt and they're trying to get it. That would be the kind of thing they could do and bring in Goldschmidt. But the Cardinals, I don't think they're going to fix it. I don't think their pitching is good enough, and I think that they're going to kind of decide at some point to give it up.
It's hard to see a team that has one of the worst run differentials in baseball right now at -52 suddenly just
turning it around.
Right. That's the thing, and it's one of the kind of things we've talked about is that it's not so much that there can't be a period of time during the season in which they play better. The Mets this season have had a stretch where I think they went like 12-3.
They did,
but that might be the only time this season they have a stretch like that. So the Cardinals might have a period of good play, but that might be the only time. They're not going to have this period. They're not going to suddenly have a 3-month stretch based on what we've seen, or they go 20-4 every month.
When you're a bad team like the White Sox we talked about, and you've won 4 in a row, it's notable.
Right.
Right. So you're talking about that. So now
welcome to the Colorado Rockies, who just won 3 in a row.
Right. And
that's at 11-28.
Yeah, exactly. And they're playing the Rangers today in Colorado, and our daughter is going to the game, and your sister. So hopefully she'll get to see a Rocky win against the Rangers. But in that division, the Dodgers, obviously are outclassing everybody.
The Dodgers are sitting there saying, hey, don't look at the Phillies. We're right here, too. We're just as good as them. And they're saying, we've got our MVP candidate, Shohei Ohtani.
What about Mookie Betts?
Which one of them?
What about Freddie Freeman? He's batting 300 now. So nobody even talks about Freddie Freeman. It doesn't even count.
Because he's just not even as...
You're only hitting 300.
You're not even close to the other two.
No, we're going to do that. And Will Smith, wait a second. He's like the best hitting catcher in the National League, maybe in baseball right now.
That's why they've got 220 runs scored, and they're 27-14.
And they got Walker Buehler back. Mm-hmm. So those pitchers are going to start coming back, and they've got the same thing like the Rays with all these guys who, are you kidding? So the Padres are gamely chasing them in second place. They do have the 500 record, but that's going to be like the AL West. I think it's going to be a dogfight. The Padres, Diamondbacks, and Giants. I don't think the Giants are going to hang
The question in the NL West is, will the dogfight be somebody challenging the Dodgers for first place, or will it be between the Padres, the Diamondbacks, and the Giants fighting for a wild card?
Yeah, I think it's that, and if you're a dreaming Met fan, maybe I think you're hoping that the Mets are one of those teams included in that. The Phillies or the Braves, one of those teams is going to be that.
And that's what makes the NL so difficult, is that because the Phillies and the Braves exist, you're essentially playing for one of 2 wild card spots instead of 3. Guess what? That's happening in the AL too, because of the AL East.
The Yankees and the Orioles.
You're playing for 2 spots, and so because you're going to count on those teams keeping it up through the rest of the year. Whereas you're not as sure about the AL Central teams, but given that both the Guardians and the Twins are playing well, there's going to be a lot of competition for very few wild card spots this year.
So yeah, in the NL, if it were today, it would be the Braves or Phillies. It would be the Brewers and Cubs are second place, so they would be the wild card team because they're Florida.
Actually, no, it would be, interestingly, the wild card goes to the. When I'm looking at this, it's got shown the Padres as the wild card. The second wild card, not the Cubs. I'm not sure.
I don't think that's right.
It doesn't make sense because the Cubs are 23-17.
But there's 3 wild cards.
Right, but I'm seeing the wild card. Yeah, okay. It's because this isn't correct. So when I'm looking at this, it's showing how many of the games are up. So the Cubs are up 3 games in the wild card. The Braves are up 6 games in the wild card. And then the Padres and the Nationals currently are tied for the third wild card.
So that's all you got to do is that those third place for the wild card right now, obviously early in the season, are 500 teams. So one of those teams has to distinguish itself and just be a better than 500 team. Doesn't have to be great.
And we'll probably
has to be better.
That shake out over the course
of
this
Mets
year.
are so hoping that they're going to be one of those teams.
Yeah.
And I don't know. I don't know what to expect from that team. So, yeah, I think we had some interesting performances over the week I think we should notably talk about. And that includes that 3 of the AL teams have sub-3 ERAs, which surprised me. Boston, Seattle, and the Yankees. Strikeouts are actually down from last year, but so are singles, doubles, and home runs.
And runs. So basically, teams aren't striking out as much, but they're also not getting as many hits.
Right. The league is hitting .237 in the American League.
Ooh.
That's like 1968. Well, no one's talking about lowering the mound or anything like that.
The scoring is not down that much.
Or raising the lower.
Right. So I think that's the big thing. If suddenly every game was 1-0 and 2-1, then there would probably be a lot more clamor for change.
Right. And so, and weird things have happened, like Trevor Williams being 4-0 for the Nationals. So, guys can get wins, and we'll have our podcast on Thursday where we talk about how pitcher wins have started. So check that out, because I think, you'll find an interesting conversation about how there aren't as many wins for pitchers anymore.
And despite, somewhat we've seen the death of the triple, Jarren Duran of the Red Sox is on pace for 20 this season. He would be one of the first guys to get 20 triples in a long time.
I think I did an article on triples, so I know that Curtis Granderson for the Tigers had, I think, 23 triples in like 2007 or something like that.
And the last guy to get 25 in a season was Kiki Kyler in 1925.
Yes, a Pittsburgh Pirate. So, in fact, there were a couple of Pirates that have triples in their history at the top of it. We talked about the pitcher Eric Fetty, who went to Korea and relearned his way of pitching, and I was sort of laughing, going, I remember when he pitched, in the National League a couple of years ago, and that's against the Mets for the Nationals.
And he was not great.
He was not very good, so now he's 4-0. So clearly, it's amazing to me. It's amazing to me the guy can go and fix himself in Korea and come back.
What I think it tells you is how far we've come with pitching and statistics and science, and that a guy can look at his motion and figure out what he was doing wrong in a much different way than just, throw it where their bat aims.
Right. It's more than so. It's a combination in his case of mechanics. In that, I think he dropped his arm slot down because he found that coming over the top wasn't effective on getting the break that he needed, and the pitch mix really changed in terms of here's what I'm throwing that's working, and I should throw more of that.
I should go more of that. Right. And that kind of goes back to something we've talked about. Where just pitchers are stubborn. They like to throw what they like to throw, and sometimes even though they know in a game they're throwing a better curveball, if they normally throw their slider, they'll just keep throwing that slider because that's what they throw.
Yeah. We could get into a whole conversation on a future podcast just about who's making the decision on when pitches to throw. And a lot of that we talk about has to do with the pitcher himself, right? Max Scherzer is calling his own game.
Right. Depends on who the pitcher is.
If he were pitching, which he's not because he just came up with another injury.
A neck nerve injury.
A nerve injury in his neck, so he's not going to come back for a while either. I'll say last couple of things. Your early MVP candidates in the National League.
I think you're looking at Ohtani, Betts, and probably Ozuna.
Yeah, I'd say that's a pretty good call.
I'm not sure who from the Phillies will get in there. Probably Harper. One Philly person will.
Yeah, I mean, to this point, he doesn't have, but there's a lot of season to be played.
So Muto, he might end up in the discussion. And the AL, I think you'd probably look at a guy like Soto.
Yeah, I would say that he is. Although the Orioles have a bunch of guys who have hit pretty well, I'm not sure.
Right,
I don't think Jordan Westburg would be an MVP candidate, but he's sure playing very well for them right now.
Right, it's kind of like they might run into the issue where it's like the lineup is so good overall that no one guy kind of distinguishes himself enough to be the MVP.
Well, that's the Dodger problem, right? With Betts and Ohtani and Freeman and
Betts
Smith.
and Ohtani are just playing at such an exemplary level. The rest of the NL is getting introduced to so Shohei Ohtani is just good enough to win the MVP even when he's just DHing. He's not even pitching right now.
So, and then when you mentioned Tarik Skubal as the early Cy Young, I don't really have an NL Cy Young.
It's too early to really get too much.
Anybody there hasn't really stuck out.
Right, Trevor Williams is 4-0 for the Nationals.
He's not going to win the Cy Young.
Exactly.
So, but another interesting week. We've got some good series coming up. I think we got Cleveland is going to play a series with. Let me make sure I get this right. After they leave the White Sox, obviously, they are playing the Rangers. So I thought that was another. They're going to go to Texas and play the Rangers.
A fun, series between first place teams.
Rangers finally have made it to first base, and Seager I thought he was getting untracked, and he's still kind of really bumping along yet, but he's going to get hot.
He'll figure it out.
He's going to get hot.
He's too good.
He's my MVP candidate, so he better. I'd say that. So, but there really aren't. Sorry, any other great series next week? Not in the early part of the week. The Phillies and the Mets.
It's hard to really talk about great series this early in the year because you really don't have any idea how much of any one series is a preview of anything.
Or when you're a 500 team, you win 2 out of 3, you're still kind of a 500 team.
Exactly.
So unless you have a bunch of wins in a row and you make yourself into what people think is a good team, then you got something to talk about.